Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, I think we can say it's official. Lane Kiffin's heading to LSU, and we were very hesitant to do this episode because of the twists and turns that we've seen. Now, here's the important twist that we've seen on Sunday morning. Sounds like Lane Kiffin's fully bought in. Hey, I'm leaving Ole Miss right now, and I'm going to LSU. It sounded like the sticking point here was Lane Kiffin wanted to coach this team in the playoffs. That's hard to do in this era of the sport. I mean, look, we can criticize the college football calendar all we want. It's the reality is it is very hard to coach a team in the college football playoffs while you're planning on coaching another team next season, right? And it sounds like Lane Kiffin is getting on a plane to Baton Rouge. And he's telling his Ole Miss staff, hey, you're either coming with me right now or there's not going to be a spot for you on the staff going into 2026. And I don't think the LSU fans really care about how it's playing out at Ole Miss. I think
Oh,
the
there's
LSU
no room for morality in this sport. I think
no.
we figured that out. You got to do what you got to do to win your games.
So the LSU fans are celebrating. Like I've been on the message boards all morning, right? LSU has their guy. And now the conversation suddenly becomes, what's it going to look like? Is there going to be some philosophical changes in terms of Lane Kiffin at LSU versus what he did at Ole Miss? Because I'll tell you one thing real quick, Dill. There's a reason he's leaving Ole Miss. And I think Ole Miss has done a really good job rallying that university around the program. And I think Ole Miss made this a harder decision than many of us expected for Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin's leaving to go to LSU because he's going to have the resources to not just make a run in the playoffs every couple of years. He's going to have the resources to turn this program into a program that is consistently not just competing for playoff spots, national championships. And if you're an LSU fan, you got the guy. There was a reason he was the number one guy at Florida. There was a reason he was the number one guy at LSU. I think what you love here is there's a lot of alignment. I think everybody in LSU's camp, the administration, the boosters, and the donors, they all wanted Lane Kiffin. And so you get the feeling that he's going to have the maximum firepower to have a lot of success. What's it going to look like? That's the story I want to get into before we do. And as always, to the LSU fans and just the college football fans in general, would love to get some opinions on this. I appreciate the amount of support y'all have shown for the coaching search period that we've gone through for the last month has been amazing. Can't thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And Dill, without further ado, sell me on Lane Kiffin. I don't think this needs to be said. I think the reasons are already out there, but sell me on Lane Kiffin, LSU, and why we both think this can be very, very successful.
No, there was a very clear number one guy for the college jobs open, right?
Yeah.
There was big ones. It was Florida and it was LSU and Auburn. There's a reason that Lane Kiffin, and granted, Lane Kiffin was probably never in play for Auburn, given what happened a couple of years ago. But there's a reason there was the number one whale out there, and it was Lane Kiffin. He's probably, I guess what really separates him from everyone else, maybe aside from Coach Drink, is that he is a proven winner at the highest level of college football in the SEC. In like, again, John Summerall, Alex Golish, like I don't think those are bad coaches, and they might work really well at their respective schools, but they don't have that like resume that Lane Kiffin has where he can point to.
It was very, very clear, very, very clear that LSU valued winning in the SEC, right? Because who was the number one guy was Lane Kiffin, winner in the SEC. Who was the number two guy? Coach Drink, right? And Coach Drink, that was going to be a weird fit. That was going to be a very similar, kind of weird fit that Brian Kelly was, but he's done a really good job at Missouri in the SEC. Here's the other thing I love about this one. If I'm an LSU fan, you really don't have to worry about quarterback and offense. You kind of know that's going to get handled, right? That matter. It is so difficult to get quarterbacks and offenses that can be routinely successful in this conference because the quality of defenses and the NFL bodies you see every single Saturday in this conference is legit, right? For Lane Kiffin, I mean, and here's the storyline. Like Trinidad Chambliss going to court trying to get another year of eligibility. It sounds like he might get that year. Trinidad Chambliss might be coming to LSU, and that you talk about jump start, because I think it became very clear that Michael Van Buren's not going to be the starting quarterback for LSU in 2026. That's a jump start. But though, even if it's not Trinidad Chambliss, if you are a quarterback and you hit the portal and you're trying to figure out where you want to go play your ball, there's going to be a line out the door to go play in the Lane Kiffin offense. So that to me are the two things: proven winner in the SEC, a guy that's going to get quarterback and offense right. I want to ask you about this because I want to get to the defensive coaching staff too, but I want to ask you, do you think there'll be a change in philosophy in terms of how Lane Kiffin runs LSU? Because what we saw at Ole Miss was heavy in the portal, right? At LSU, you have the ability to recruit the high school ranks a little bit different.
I don't think you take the LSU job unless you plan on really recruiting high school at a high level, because that's probably the big separator between LSU in Florida and probably those other huge jobs, if you will, those like tier 1 A1 jobs, is that LSU has an in-state recruiting advantage that nobody can even really come close with. And that's not to say like Georgia has really good kids in the state, Florida has really good kids in the state, Texas, same thing. But like you don't just see the top 10 kids in the state year after year pretty much all end up at one school. Like
there's a reason none of these Louisiana kids are wavering, man. There's a reason they committed to Brian Kelly in the first place, right? It's you have that ability. And here's the thing I want to be very clear about is that you have the chance to have a monster uptick in recruiting the high school ranks, right? You know, Ole Miss was sitting around 15 through 20, closer to 20. LSU, it's a layup to get into the top 10. Layup, right? Now the question is, how much does he use the portal? And here's my argument is I'm normally a high school guy, right? Like you want to win national championships consistently. It starts with the baseline talent at the high school ranks. There are certain difference makers that you can only get at the high school ranks. You can't really find in the portal. I don't want to say Lane Kiffin shouldn't use the portal, though, because his ability to evaluate and get the right guys, there's a difference between what Brian Kelly just did, what Mike Norvell is doing at Florida State, where they go out and get a bunch of names in the portal, but they don't get the right guys, and what Lane Kiffin does, the hit right with Lane Kiffin going to the portal is absolutely elite, and Dill specifically on the offensive line.
I don't understand how he's built offensive lines the way he has through the portal, because everybody else tries to do it and they all look horrible. Like the really good offensive lines are mostly teams that have been able to recruit and develop really good players. And I think he's going to probably do that more at LSU. I think he has the opportunity to have that be a strength of his team rather than at Ole Miss. So it was typically like, I don't want to say a hindrance, but it wasn't leading the way necessarily. But the fact that he could get functional SEC offense, not for just functional, like good SEC offensive lines, primarily through the portal, was like very impressive.
And that's going to be important because you figure that that's going to need to happen at least in 2026, right? We got to figure out how to run the football, hold up in pass protection. I got a lot of confidence that he can do that immediately for LSU and get good quarterback play immediately. Then the other conversation is what's the defense going to look like? And it sounds like one of the staff members that will not be leaving is Pete Golding, who I think is a very good defensive coordinator. Does Lane Kiffin push to keep Blake Baker around?
I would have to assume that Blake Baker is going to be a no-brainer. Try to keep him. I think he, A, has done a good job, but B, I think it does help with some of the continuity. Like you see this LSU class in 2026 is kind of held together for the most part. I do think I look like, yeah, you want Lamar Browns of the world to necessarily stay. I do think Blake Baker, like, A, I don't think you're going to find a much better defensive coordinator out there than Blake Baker. B, I think, like, you do get the added benefit of some continuity here.
Yeah, and there are guys that you want to retain on defense, right? I mean, most notably a cat like DJ Pickett. It's I don't think any LSU fan needed us to say it's a home run hire. It's a home run hire. And I did, again, the thing that I would think's big for LSU, and it's unfortunate for Ole Miss. The LSU fans don't give a damn about like how the Ole Miss fans be feeling, though, is it sounds like this is going to happen now, right? Because there were some question marks. Lane Kiffin did have the leverage, right? It sounds like Ole Miss ain't going to let him coach in the playoffs if he's going to be leaving for LSU. So it sounds like Lane Kiffin's going to get to Baton Rouge, and he's going to be immediately building the staff and the roster to immediately win in 2026. And that's the cool part about this era, man, is you can. Like, depending on what Lane Kiffin does, I would not be surprised if we're talking about LSU immediately next year being in the national championship conversation. It's the kind of coach
It's not like if you can retain the roster, it's not like you have a horrible lack of talent from Brian Kelly. Like you have some real lack of talent at some certain spots, but
yeah.
you said it, like there's a lot of elements. It's not like Brian Kelly recruited horribly at LSU. There's
But even I think this roster needs some work. The thing is, Lane Kiffin
no, for
showed
sure, but it's like you do have the bones of something. Like there's still really good players on this team.
I think there needs to be some work done personally, right? Like that was one of the separators between Florida and LSU is Florida probably has a better young stable of talent than what I think Brian Kelly left. There's a lot of one and done on this.
Yeah.
Well, but look, that doesn't matter because you have a guy that I think's a freaking wizard in the portal.
Yeah, he was a one and done every year at Ole Miss,
and he made it work. Yeah, but I am interested to see how it changes. Like, does he lean more into recruiting the high school ranks? All right, appreciate you guys. Finally got to talk about it. I didn't want to jump the gun. Maybe we're still jumping the gun. I don't know. But sounds like Lane Kiffin going to be coaching at LSU next year. Dynamite hire. We think they got it right. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.